Welcome to the deep dive. We are closing out Cybersecurity Awareness Month here in October 2025. And if you, like a lot of security folks, feel like the threat landscape is just evolving faster than ever before, you're definitely not wrong. The pace, the complexity of attacks, it's reached a point that's frankly unprecedented.
Yeah, it really has. It's not just a feeling either. The data, it supports this speed up. We're looking at figures showing a pretty dramatic increase in, well, targeted aggression. For instance, ransomware attacks aimed specifically at industrial operators, the companies running our critical infrastructure. They surged by a massive 46% in just the first quarter of this year.
46%. Wow. That's basically an operational nightmare unfolding in real time, isn't it? And we've seen how quickly these attacks can just lead to catastrophic failure. We've looked at breaches this year. I mean, remember those two major UK businesses? That resulted in 6.5 million people having their data stolen.
Oof, yeah. And the collateral damage is often worse than the initial breach itself. Look at that case, the 158-year-old UK firm, K&P Logistics. They ceased operations entirely, put 700 people out of work. All because the Akira ransomware gang exploited a single weak password.
A single password. That's just,
Yeah.
it sums up the whole strategic challenge facing, well, every organization right now, doesn't it? The threat isn't always some super sophisticated zero-day thing. Often it's a failure of, basic hygiene, but amplified by a really organized cybercrime.
Exactly. And that's why our mission today is really tailored for you, the listener. We're taking this overwhelming flood of facts and stats and trying to distill it into clear, actionable strategic insights. We're focusing on what you need to know right now to plan proactively for 2026.
Okay, so we're going to unpack the most dangerous trends of 2025: ransomware, social engineering, the devastating cost of security debt. Then we'll explore the emerging strategic dangers, things like the AI arms race and the escalating requirements of global compliance frameworks like Zero Trust and CMMC.
Right. And just to set the stage quickly, let's define what we mean by a cybersecurity threat. Essentially, it's any circumstance or event that could potentially harm operations, assets, or individuals because an information system gets compromised. Unauthorized access, destruction, disclosure, modification, or denial of service, that kind of thing.
And it's really crucial to remember this isn't just about external bad actors, nation states or cyber criminals after money. We absolutely have to factor in internal sources. And those tend to fall into two main buckets, right?
Yeah, that's right. You've got the malicious insiders, people intentionally trying to cause harm, steal data, whatever. But then you have the, honestly, far more common negligent insiders. These are folks who unwittingly cause damage through simple human error, maybe poor security practices, or just, clicking the wrong link at the wrong time.
So the goal, really, regardless of where the threat comes from, is protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the good old CIA triad of that information.
Indeed. And that protection, it requires continuous year-round vigilance and planning. It's not a one-off thing. Which actually brings us to a quick thank you to our sponsors. They provide resources that are pretty essential for that kind of strategic defense. We'll be talking a lot about year-round planning and human-centric defense today.
That's right. Two excellent resources for you are www.scamwatchhq.com. They provide timely awareness about seasonal and financial scams, really helps protect your people from those tricky social engineering attacks we'll discuss. And also www.cisomarketplace.services. That's an invaluable resource for strategic compliance, risk management, and crucially, planning those critical annual security activities.
Yeah, great resources. Links to both are in the description so you can check them out later. Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this increasingly complex threat landscape, starting with the biggest dangers we're seeing in 2025.
Okay, Section 1. We absolutely have to kick off with the persistent reign of ransomware. It's the standard nightmare scenario, right? Malware encrypts your critical data. Attackers demand payment, usually in untraceable crypto, for the key to get it back.
Right, and ransomware isn't just a volume threat anymore. It's a strategic one because of who it targets. Critical sectors like manufacturing, healthcare, critical infrastructure, they're prime targets. But what's really interesting now is how the business model behind it has evolved. We're talking about the maturation of ransomware as a service, or RAY.
Race, yeah, that seems to have fundamentally shifted the whole criminal landscape. How exactly does that model make the threat worse in 2025?
Well, it basically industrializes cybercrime. Think of it like a franchise model. Reyes provides a ready-made toolkit. It often comes with customer support, payment processing, even negotiation guides. This massively lowers the technical bar for entry. So we're not just talking about lone hackers anymore.
We're talking about networks.
Exactly. Fast affiliate networks. These affiliates might specialize in different parts of the attack. Some buy initial access from brokers. Remember the KMP password example. Brokers find those weak points. Then, the affiliate uses the RAS platform to deploy the actual malware and handle the ransom part. This division of labor makes attacks faster, more professional, and way harder to trace.
And the real-world impact is just terrifyingly effective at stopping operations cold. Take the May 2025 Interlock ransomware attack on Kettering Health. They had to cancel essential services, surgeries, radiation treatments for almost a week.
That takes the impact beyond just a financial loss, doesn't it? It becomes a direct public safety crisis. Patients are genuinely harmed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Precisely. The cost isn't just the ransom payment, which, let's be honest, often gets paid, or the huge regulatory fines. It's the long-term cost, rebuilding infrastructure, regaining trust,
Yeah.
and just the massive operational debt from having to revert to, like, pen and paper for days on end.
Okay, so that's the technical threat of RAS. But right alongside it is something arguably more insidious because it targets us, humans. Social engineering.
Ah, yes. Social engineering.
Boy.
The sophisticated manipulation of human trust. It completely bypasses your expensive firewalls and defenses. It relies on non-technical means to get access. We're talking standard phishing, of course, but also pretexting, where an attacker makes up a believable scenario, pretending to be someone in authority, maybe IT support, maybe a vendor, and quid pro quo, offering some fake incentive in return for sensitive info.
And here's where it gets really interesting, right? Because the sophistication in 2025 seems designed specifically to beat our best technical defenses, like multi-factor authentication. We're seeing hacker groups, scattered spiders, shiny hunters. They're targeting IT help desks directly.
This is a critical pivot strategically. Instead of trying to, crack the MFA token itself, they just call the help desk. They pretend to be a senior exec who just lost their phone and desperately needs their MFA reset right now.
And they sound convincing.
Often, yes. They use open source intelligence stuff from LinkedIn, company websites to get the victor's name, title, maybe even family details. Makes the whole story seem legitimate. And because the IT help desk person has legitimate admin access, they become the unwitting key to the kingdom. These attacks are tough because they use little or no malware. They're often invisible to your standard endpoint detection.
And the impact when they succeed is huge. The July 2025 breach at Allianz Life's third-party CRM system, that was social engineering, wasn't it?
It was a perfect example. That single breach potentially compromised data for most of their 1.4 million customers. In the financial sector, no less, it just shows securing your own network is kind of useless if you don't also secure your vendors and address their human vulnerability.
Which naturally leads us to the third major threat area, insider threats and credential compromise. Whether it's a vendor, a contractor, or a full-time employee, having legitimate access is the biggest defense killer.
Right. We've already said traditional perimeter defenses are useless against insiders.
Right.
Let's dig into that difference between malicious and negligent intent again, especially now with hybrid work being so common.
Okay.
Malicious intent is clear-cut, right? Someone wants to steal intellectual property, sabotage systems, commit fraud. Pretty straightforward, though hard to detect sometimes. But the negligent insiders, they're the real silent killer, especially in these hybrid setups. They might use personal insecure devices for work stuff. They might bypass security protocols just because it's easier. Or, and this is incredibly common, they use laughably weak or reuse passwords across multiple sites.
Yeah, that password reuse thing, it's endemic.
It is. And the explosion of devices, the blurring lines between home and work networks, it just massively increases the attack surface for this kind of negligence.
And the financial cost of that basic negligence can be extreme. We keep coming back to the KMP Logistics case because it's so brutal. The Akira ransomware gang didn't need some fancy zero-day exploit. They just needed to find one weak password, which was probably easy because, as that Cyber News study of 19 billion passwords showed, 94% were duplicates or reused. 94%.
That number should honestly send a chill down the spine of every CISO listening right now. 94%.
Yeah.
It means that while companies spend millions on fancy perimeter defenses, the vast majority of initial access points probably rely on a single, easily cracked, human-failing credential reuse. It's an endemic problem, and it gives attackers massive opportunities for moving laterally once they get that first foothold.
Okay, that really sets the stage for this huge, growing problem of security debt. We know data breaches lead to reputational damage, sometimes even business shutdown. But let's focus on this alarming trend you mentioned, the time it takes to actually fix things.
Yeah, this is where we shift from the immediate threat like ransomware to a more systemic failure within organizations. Our sources show the average time to fix security flaws has jumped dramatically. It was around 171 days 5 years ago. Now, it's a staggering 252 days.
252 days, it's what, over 8 months. Organizations are knowingly leaving high-risk security flaws open for 8 months.
On average, yes,
Yeah.
that's the average. And half of organizations now carry what's called high-risk security debt, meaning flaws that have been open for over a year.
Over a year. Why is that number climbing so fast? Is it just incompetence, or is the environment itself becoming just too complex to manage effectively?
It's probably a mix, driven heavily by complexity. First, the shift to hybrid and multi-cloud environments creates just immense complexity. Flaws are harder to find, harder to isolate, harder to patch across all these different systems. Second, organizations are often suffering from tool overload. Too many security products, generating too many alerts. It leads to alert fatigue, poor prioritization. People just get overwhelmed. They know the problem exists, but they lack the clear governance structure or maybe the resources to prioritize and fix it efficiently.
And the legal consequences for that delay are starting to match the risk, it seems. We saw AT&T agree to that huge $177 million settlement back in June 2025, following their 2024 breaches. It feels like regulators and lawsuits are now directly punishing the duration of the vulnerability exposure, holding that 252-day average fix time up as proof of negligence.
Absolutely. The longer a known critical vulnerability exists, the stronger the case becomes for a regulatory failure, for negligence. The solution to cutting down this massive security debt isn't necessarily buying more tools. It's about better governance, better process, which leads us neatly into the whole strategic and compliance calendar side of things, which has to be a year-round focus.
Right. That 252-day figure, that's kind of our North Star for the rest of this deep dive, isn't it? It highlights this massive gap between identifying a problem and actually strategically resolving it. Speaking of strategy and timely response, let's pivot now into the psychological elements of defense, because all those non-technical attacks, they rely on exploiting human behavior.
Yeah, as we move from the firewalls and the networks to the human element, it's fascinating. We see threat actors operating with a, well, pretty clear, predictable rhythm. They actually structure their attacks around seasonal patterns. They strike when people are distracted, maybe vulnerable, or dealing with high-stress things like tax season or the holidays. This is basically the operational concept behind what we can call the year-round scammer calendar.
And since we're closing out October, we are deep in that fall-winter peak season, which means certain high-risk scams are hitting their stride right now. This is exactly why resources like our sponsor, www.scamwatchhq.com, which tracks these seasonal trends, are so critical for awareness.
Absolutely. Right now in October, we see a few things converging. Yes, you have the sort of fun, maybe lower-risk Halloween costume scams, fake online shops trying to grab credit card details. But much more seriously, October 15th marks the start of Medicare open enrollment here in the U.S., and that runs through December 7th.
Okay, why is that period such a flashpoint for cybercrime? What's the specific risk there?
Well, it targets seniors, right? A demographic that's often, though not always, less technically savvy. And it involves high-stakes, time-sensitive decisions and calls. Scammers pose as Medicare reps, insurance agents. They use pretexting to get seniors to verify their personal information. They're after Medicare numbers, Social Security numbers, valuable stuff for identity theft. The urgency created by that enrollment deadline makes people bypass their usual caution sometimes.
I can see that. And I imagine this human-centric focus, this pressure, only ramps up as we get closer to the actual holiday shopping frenzy in November and December.
Oh, it explodes.
Yeah.
November and December are basically the peak financial season for many cybercriminals. You see the massive surge in online shopping scams around Black Friday, Cyber Monday, offering incredible deals that just don't exist, purely designed for credential harvesting or stealing payment info. Then you have the fake package delivery scams, those texts or emails impersonating USPS, FedEx, Amazon.
Oh, yeah, I get this all the time. Your package couldn't be delivered.
Exactly. Claiming a delivery failed, asking you to click an urgent link to reschedule or pay a tiny redelivery fee. It plays directly into people's anxiety about getting their holiday orders on time. And the schemes get more emotional too. We see a spike in holiday charity scams, collecting donations through fake websites or social media pages, often after a natural disaster or during major religious holidays. And then there are the persistent, really destructive gift card scams.
Ugh, those, where they demand payment via gift cards.
Yeah. for fake bills, fake taxes, sometimes even threats, often targeting vulnerable small business owners or elderly folks. Gift cards are basically untraceable cash for criminals.
Okay, so those are the seasonal peaks. But when we look at the financial schemes that cause the most overall damage year-round, we have to talk about investment fraud, right? The numbers are staggering.
Yeah, investment fraud was the single costliest cybercrime in the U.S. in 2024. Reported losses were over $6.57 billion, billion dollars with a B, and the schemes are getting incredibly sophisticated. They're not just targeting individuals anymore. They're impersonating venture capitalists, legitimate financial advisors, using perfectly cloned investment platforms to build trust before disappearing with the funds, affecting businesses too.
Wow, and the scale can be huge.
Massive. Remember that case in June 2025? They dismantled an international network that laundered 460 million, that's nearly €500 million, through crypto exchanges. They deceived over 5,000 victims globally using these cloned investment platforms. It shows how these operations are global and leverage crypto for speed and anonymity.
Okay, and then there's the classic highly targeted attack against businesses. Business email compromise, or BEC, still a major problem.
Oh, absolutely. BEC remains a high-impact fraud. It's where threat actors impersonate a senior executive, maybe the CEO, or trusted vendor. They trick an employee, usually someone in finance or accounts payable, into making a fraudulent wire transfer or maybe sending sensitive data like employee W-2 forms. Now, interestingly, while the volume of BEC complaints seems to have plateaued a bit, the average cost per successful incident keeps rising. It totaled $2.77 billion in losses in 2024 alone.
So if the average cost is rising, does that mean the attacks that do succeed are more targeted? They're doing more homework?
Precisely. They might spend weeks inside a compromised executive's email account, maybe Microsoft 365. They monitor internal emails. They learn the company's payment approval processes, vendor relationships. Then they strike at just the right moment, maybe when the real exec is traveling, creating maximum confusion or urgency. The defense here is really non-technical, but it's essential. You have to enforce mandatory verbal confirmation using a pre-verified phone number for any change to payment details or wire instructions, period. And you need to run regular, highly realistic BEC simulation exercises as part of your ongoing employee training. Make them practice spotting these things.
Okay, so all these human failures, clicking the phishing link, falling for the pretext call, approving the fraudulent wire, they're driven by psychological factors, right? The sources mention something called protection motivation theory, or PMT. How does PMT help explain why people fail to protect themselves, or maybe why training sometimes doesn't stick?
All right, PMT is a useful framework here. It helps explain why individuals choose to adopt, or more often fail to adopt, protective behaviors, like being cautious online. For someone to be motivated to actually defend themselves, they need high scores in two key areas: threat appraisals and coping appraisals.
Okay, let's break that down. Threat appraisals first. What's that?
Threat appraisals is basically two things: how severe you think a potential cyber event would be, and how vulnerable you personally feel to it. So if an employee thinks phishing is something that only happens to other people, or maybe they think a data breach is just an IT problem, their threat appraisal is low. They don't see the personal risk, so they're not motivated to change their behavior.
Okay, so I need to understand the danger and feel like it applies to me. But even if I get that, it doesn't mean I know what to do about it or if it will even work, right?
Exactly. That's the second critical piece: coping appraisals. This has two parts as well. First is self-efficacy. That's your confidence in your own ability to successfully perform a security action, like spotting a really convincing spear phishing email. Second is response efficacy. Your belief that the protective action you take, like reporting the email, will actually work and make a difference.
Ah, okay. So if a company gives its employees, like, confusing one-off annual training.
Then employees likely feel low self-efficacy,
Yeah.
right? They don't trust their own ability to spot the scam. They might also feel like reporting it is pointless. Low response efficacy. So what happens? They often revert to apathy. Just click delete, or worse, click the link. This is why lack of awareness, lack of understanding their personal role, and inadequate education are so often cited as key failures in overall risk management.
So fundamentally, the human isn't the weakest link because they're inherently flawed, but often because the organization fails to properly boost those coping appraisals. It needs continuous, relevant training and clear support.
Precisely. It's really an organizational failure as much as a personal one. Effective information security management systems and ISMS, they require moving way beyond that single check-the-box annual training video. Training needs to be continuous, role-based, context-specific, and visibly supported by senior management to really overcome that user apathy and turn employees into active participants in the company's defense.
Okay, that transition from apathy to active strategic defense brings us perfectly into our next section. We need to move beyond just reacting to threats and start focusing on strategic architecture, compliance, and preparing for what's next, particularly the AI revolution heading into 2026. Right, since we are in Q4, the last quarter of the year, October isn't just about Cybersecurity Awareness Month activities, it's crunch time for strategic planning too. Organizations have to demonstrate their security posture through compliance activities, and these happen year-round. It's a constant cycle. Now, if you're managing this complex calendar, you know how vital structured planning is. Which brings us back to our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.services. Their resources are specifically designed to help CISOs navigate this exact annual roadmap.
Yeah, looking at that typical annual compliance calendar, October is intense. You've got quarterly KPI reviews wrapping up, you're finishing off Awareness Month activities, and there's a huge deadline looming. The annual ISO 2701.202 transition deadline is October 31st. That's a big one for many orgs. Plus, organizations dealing with the U.S. Defense Industrial Base, the DIB, are often doing their annual CMMC reviews around now. And critically, this is when serious drafting begins for the next year's security strategy, usually finalized in December.
Okay, we talked about that average fixed time for security debt being 252 days. If a company is struggling with that kind of internal lag, how incredibly difficult must it be to meet a hard deadline like that October 31st ISO transition, which really demands comprehensive governance, right?
Oh, it's almost impossible. ISO 27001 is, the global gold standard for an information security management system, an ISMS. It forces you to have documented processes for everything: governance, risk treatment, access control, incident response, the works. If you're sitting on 8 months or even over a year of unresolved high-risk security debt, you fundamentally lack the demonstrated structure and the documented evidence required for a successful ISO transition or certification renewal.
So the compliance frameworks like ISO or maybe NIST CSF, they almost act as the mechanism forcing organizations to attack that 252-day fixed time.
In a way, yes. They provide the structure and the deadlines. They mandate things like annual risk assessments, often done in January, and require external penetration testing, maybe scheduled for March. These aren't just bureaucratic hoops. They're forcing functions for strategic hygiene and continuous improvement.
Okay, that's a great point about compliance driving action. Now let's talk about the huge force multiplier that's redefining both compliance and defense, the AI arms race.
AI. Yeah, the ultimate double-edged sword right now in cybersecurity. On the offensive side, attackers are absolutely using generative AI to automate scale and speed. This means automating the creation of custom, highly realistic social engineering messages. Think hyper-personalized phishing emails at a volume that was just unthinkable a couple of years ago. Even worse, AI is powering polymorphic malware. That's malware that can automatically change its own code structure to evade signature-based detection systems. It makes attacks much faster and way harder for traditional defenses to catch.
That speed is genuinely frightening, especially when you measure it against our 252-day average fix window. It feels like the offense is accelerating way faster than the defense can patch. But on the flip side, the defense side is also investing heavily in AI, right? Where are U.S. businesses seeing the most benefit from defensive AI?
Defensive AI is rapidly becoming foundational to the modern Security Operations Center, the SOC. Its biggest strength is processing power. AI can analyze literally billions of security events daily, something no human team could ever handle, to find those subtle, anomalous patterns that might indicate a breach or an emerging vulnerability. It dramatically speeds up incident response by automating the initial data gathering, triage, and alerting processes. Get the right info to the human analyst faster. And crucially, it's helping with vulnerability management through AI-powered code scanning, identifying security issues in the code itself in real time, ideally before it ever gets deployed.
Okay, but integrating these powerful tools isn't without risk itself, is it? There's this challenge people are calling shadow AI.
Yes, shadow AI is a huge emerging risk. It refers to the ungoverned, unapproved use of external general-purpose AI tools by employees. Think about staff uploading proprietary company documents into a public large language model, like ChatGPT or others, maybe to summarize meeting notes or debug internal code snippets.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds bad. What are the risks there?
Massive compliance risks, for starters, especially under regulations like GDPR in Europe or the upcoming EU AI Act. You're potentially exposing sensitive data, significant data exposure risk in general, and potentially catastrophic intellectual property concerns. By feeding your proprietary data into an external LLM, you are inadvertently training that external model with your company's most sensitive information. It's gone.
So the answer isn't necessarily to just ban all AI tools, right? It's more about putting guardrails in place.
Exactly. It demands a policy-first approach. Organizations need clear policies on acceptable AI use, approved tool lists, and extensive employee education on how to use these tools safely, especially regarding data handling. And you need technical controls too, maybe things like application proxies or data loss prevention tools configured to monitor and potentially block unauthorized data transfers to external AI services. You have to govern the usage before it becomes a massive liability.
Okay. So, to combat these faster AI-powered threats and manage all this resulting complexity, the fundamental network architecture itself has to change. The principle everyone talks about now is Zero Trust Architecture, or ZTA. It seems non-negotiable.
It really is becoming the baseline expectation. ZTA is often called perimeterless security. Its core principle is simple but powerful. Never trust, always verify. You start from the assumption that your network could already be compromised. This means you never trust users or devices by default, even if they are physically inside your corporate network or have been previously verified. Every access attempt needs revalidation.
How does that work in practice? What gets verified?
It requires continuous identity verification, often using strong MFA. It requires checking device compliance, is the device patched, running approved security software, and it rigidly enforces the principle of least privilege access. Users only get access to the specific resources they explicitly need for their current task for the minimum time necessary. Access is granted per request, not based on just being on the network.
Okay, let's drill down into a concept that builds on that. Zero Trust Data, or ZTD. Applying Zero Trust principles directly to data access itself. How does that work, and why is it better than just traditional role-based access?
Yeah, ZTD is critical for managing data in modern, complex environments. Think multi-cloud data lakes, sensitive customer databases, and it's vital for meeting granular privacy regulations. Instead of trusting a user simply because they have a certain job title or belong to a certain group, that's role-based access control, or RBAC, Zero Trust data often relies on attribute-based access control, or ABAC.
Okay, ABAC attributes like what?
ABAC applies access policies based on a dynamic combination of attributes related to the user, the data, and the context. Attributes could include the sensitivity classification of the data itself, the user's verified identity and role, their current physical location, or the office or remote, the time of day, the security posture of their device, maybe even their required clearance level for that specific data type.
So an AB8 policy might be something like, allow access to Project Phoenix documents only if the user is authenticated via MFA, is connecting from a corporate-managed device located within North America, and is during standard business hours, regardless of their job title.
Precisely. It's dynamic, context-aware, real-time access governance applied right at the data layer. Now, ABAC is definitely more complex to set up and manage compared to simpler RBAC roles. But for many organizations, especially those handling sensitive data across hybrid environments, it's becoming the only way to effectively combat data sprawl, truly enforce least privilege for data, and ensure the kind of privacy-preserving design required by new mandates like the EU AI Act or GDPR.
And this push towards ABAC and ZTD, it feels like part of a bigger shift towards embedding security earlier, the idea of secure by design.
Exactly. Secure by design is transitioning rapidly from just being a best practice recommendation to becoming a business and regulatory requirement, likely solidified by 2026. What it means fundamentally is prioritizing customer security and privacy as a core business requirement right from the start. You build security into the product development lifecycle from day one, often called shifting left in the development process. Instead of trying to bolt on security fixes 252 days after deployment, you use things like threat modeling, secure coding practices, maybe those AI-powered code scanners we mentioned, and establish security frameworks like the CIS controls or NIST CFF 2.0 to ensure vulnerabilities ideally never make it into production in the first place.
So security isn't an afterthought or a separate phase anymore. It has to be part of the operational DNA of the organization.
That's the goal. It needs to be baked in, not sprinkled on later.
Okay. Strategic, year-round compliance, architectural overhaul with ZTA and ZTD, integrating AI defensively. That covers a lot of the internal network and data strategy. But what about the physical infrastructure that actually keeps our modern society running, the critical systems?
Right, the security of critical national infrastructure, or CNI, is arguably the highest stakes area we need to discuss. We're
Mm.
talking about power stations, water treatment facilities, transportation networks, healthcare systems, the things society depends on.
Yeah.
Historically, these industrial control systems, the ICS that run these facilities, were protected mainly by physical isolation. They were air-gapped, meaning not connected to the public internet or even corporate IT networks.
But that's changed, hasn't it? The drive for efficiency, remote management, real-time data. It means these systems are increasingly connected now, which is great for operators, maybe, but potentially terrible for security.
Exactly. That connectivity opens them up to cyber attacks they were never designed to withstand. And securing these operational technology, or OT environments, is uniquely challenging. ICS systems often contain legacy devices that might be decades old, running outdated software that can't easily be patched. They use specialized OT protocols that IT security tools often don't understand. And crucially, the cost and operational disruption of taking these systems offline for upgrades or patching can be prohibitive. You can't just reboot a power grid component during peak demand without risking serious consequences. Production downtime is a massive concern.
Okay, so given those significant constraints, where is the strategic focus for improving security, particularly for something like the power grid? What can be done?
The focus is shifting towards increasing situational awareness and resilience without disrupting the physical operations if possible. This requires multi-stakeholder risk approaches involving engineers, IT security, physical security regulators, and a key development is the use of hybrid cyber platforms. Think of these as sophisticated digital twins.
Digital twins, like a virtual copy.
Essentially, yes, they replicate the physical OT environment, the control systems, the networks, the data flows in a safe, isolated virtual space. This allowed organizations to do things they could never do on the live system. They can safely test how attacker tactics, techniques, and procedures TTPs might work against their specific setup. They can conduct realistic penetration testing, practice incident response drills, validate defenses, all without risking a real-world blackout or disruption.
That makes sense for testing. But what about deploying new technologies like AI directly into these highly sensitive real-world OT environments? We need speed, sure, but failure there is potentially catastrophic. How do you balance that?
That is the critical question. And the approach here emphasizes what's often called assistive artificial intelligence, or AAI, and maintaining a human-in-the-loop paradigm. AAI solutions are designed to aid human operators, not replace them entirely in critical decision-making. AI can automate routine tasks like log analysis and monitoring, identifying anomalies much faster than humans can. It can be trained on the unique proprietary data models specific to that organization's ICS or SCADA systems. But, and this is crucial, we generally avoid full automation of the response actions in critical infrastructure. The regulatory hurdles are high, and the potential for cascading physical failures from a bad automated decision is just too great.
So the AI might suggest the fix or the response, but a trained human operator has to confirm and execute the action.
Exactly. Human oversight remains essential for reliability and trust in these environments. The paradigm is human empowerment through AI, not human replacement.
And architecturally, this needs structure, right? The sources mention the Purdue model integrated with an industrial edge computing platform. How does that help?
The Purdue model is a standard way to conceptualize and segment the different layers within an industrial control environment. It goes from the physical sensors and actuators at the lowest level, level 0, up through the control systems, level 1, 2, the supervisory systems, level 3, and finally to the enterprise IT network, level 4, 5 at the top. Integrating an industrial edge computing platform means placing computing power and analytics capabilities closer to the source down near levels 1 and 2 at the edge of the OT network. This allows for real-time monitoring and processing of operational data right where it's generated before it even hits the wider network. This segmentation and localized processing provide much more granular, data-driven situational awareness. It helps defenders potentially predict or isolate threats based on subtle deviations in the physical process data itself.
Okay, that covers domestic critical infrastructure. But the conversation has definitely gone global, escalating into concerns about cyber warfare and geopolitical threats, particularly affecting the defense industrial base, the DIB.
Oh, absolutely. Nation-state actors are increasingly using sophisticated cyber capabilities as tools of statecraft. We see espionage targeting defense secrets, disruptive attacks like wiper malware designed to destroy data, state-sponsored ransomware groups used for plausible deniability or revenue generation, and coordinated disinformation campaigns aimed at undermining trust or influencing populations. This clear escalation necessitated a massive push by the U.S. Department of Defense to shore up the cybersecurity of its vast supply chain, the defense industrial base.
And that protection mechanism is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, CMMC 2.0. What does CMMC actually mean for the, 300,000 or so contractors in the DIB?
CMMC 2.0 is a fundamental game changer for the DIB. It moves cybersecurity requirements from being largely voluntary guidance based on NIST standards to being a mandatory contractual requirement. It enforces tiered cybersecurity levels, Level 1 for basic safeguarding of federal contract information, FCI, up to Level 3 for protecting sensitive, controlled, unclassified information, CUI. And, crucially, for Levels 2 and 3, it generally requires independent third-party assessments conducted by accredited certified third-party assessor organizations, or C3PAOs. No more self-attestation for the critical stuff.
So basically, if you handle sensitive government information, your cybersecurity posture, as verified by an outside auditor, directly determines your ability to win and keep lucrative federal defense contracts.
That's the bottom line. Your security level becomes a condition of doing business with the DoD.
What's the biggest challenge this poses, especially for the smaller subcontractors in the DIB? It sounds expensive and complex.
Yeah. The burden is immense, no question. Both bureaucratically, in terms of documentation and process, and financially. CMMC Level 1 maps to basic NIST requirements, which most should be doing anyway. But Level 3, required for handling CUI, involves implementing a much larger set of stringent controls derived from NIST SP 800-171. Many small and medium-sized subcontractors simply lack the internal cybersecurity expertise and, frankly, the capital needed to implement all those controls and pay for the mandatory third-party audits. It forces a massive investment in security hygiene. For some, it might mean choosing between achieving full compliance or potentially losing their eligibility for federal contracts. It's tough, but from the DoD's perspective, it's viewed as non-negotiable for protecting national security information flowing through the supply chain.
Okay, so CMMC is hardening the domestic DIB. Finally, let's zoom out one last time and look at CISA's global strategy. CISA being the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. How does their plan guide U.S. businesses and their international partners?
Right, CISA's overall cybersecurity strategic plan lays out three big, enduring goals for the domestic ecosystem. Goal 1, address immediate threats. Basically, make it operationally harder and more costly for adversaries to succeed right now. Goal 2, harden the terrain. This is about promoting strong, often mandatory security practices across the board, think critical infrastructure standards, pushing secure by design. And Goal 3, drive security at scale. This involves fundamentally shifting the market, prioritizing security as a basic safety issue for all technology providers, making security a default expectation, not an optional extra.
Okay, that's the domestic focus. But globally, we know U.S. critical infrastructure relies heavily on foreign infrastructure, too. Supply chains, communications links.
Absolutely. Yeah. And CISA's FY 2025-2026 International Strategic Plan explicitly recognizes this deep interdependence. The three main international goals reflect this. First, bolster the resilience of foreign infrastructure on which the U.S. directly depends. Helping key allies secure their critical systems benefits everyone. Second, strengthen integrated cyber defense. This involves maturing bilateral and multilateral partnerships, especially between National Computer Security Incident Response Teams, or CSIRTs.
What exactly do those CSIRT engagements achieve? Is it just general threat intel sharing?
It's often much more rapid and operational than just general intel sharing. CSIRTs are designed for highly technical, near real-time information exchange about specific vulnerabilities being exploited, active attacker TTPs, indicators of compromise, like malicious IP addresses or file hashes, during an ongoing incident. This collaboration speeds up the collective defense across borders. If one country sees a new attack technique, they can quickly warn partners so they can block it too. And CISA's third international goal is simply to unify agency coordination of all these various international cybersecurity activities, ensuring the U.S. government presents a coherent front.
And the ultimate aim seems to be driving global standards upward, encouraging partners everywhere to adopt things like secure by design principles using software bills of materials, SBOMs.
Exactly. SBOMs, those detailed lists of all the software components within a product, help manage supply chain risk. CISA is also pushing for secure AI system development globally. The idea is that raising the security baseline everywhere reduces the collective risk for everyone. It really is an ecosystem-wide challenge that demands international cooperation. #tag outro. Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. To summarize what we've really unpacked today as we close out October and look towards 2026. The key takeaway is that the adversary is faster, more automated. They're using RAS models and generative AI to scale sophisticated attacks, think polymorphic malware that evades detection, and hyper-realistic social engineering that's harder than ever to spot.
Right. And defending against this isn't about just one silver bullet. It requires a fundamental architectural shift. Zero trust has to become the default security posture, and that needs to extend down to zero trust data using mechanisms like ABAC for granular control. This technical shift has to be married with strict, year-round adherence to compliance frameworks, whether it's ISO 27001, NIST CSF, or CMMC 2.0 for the DIB. These frameworks force the strategic hygiene needed to combat that growing 252-day security debt we talked about.
And critically, the mindset needs to shift too. Leading organizations are starting to view cybersecurity spending not just as a necessary cost or a burden, but as a strategic investment. An investment that yields tangible business benefits like winning contracts in regulated sectors like the DIB, potentially getting lower cyber insurance premiums, and of course the massive cost avoidance from preventing major incidents in the first place.
Yeah, the path forward seems to require this balance, doesn't it? Balancing innovative leadership, like adopting assistive AI carefully in critical infrastructure with sophisticated disciplined risk management, and always remembering that the investment in your people through continuous effective training that boosts those coping appraisals we discuss has to keep pace with the investment in shiny new technology.
Couldn't agree more. People, process, and technology.
Okay, so here is the final provocative thought for you, our listener, to carry forward. It ties directly back to that urgency created by the AI age. We established that the average fixed time for known security flaws is now a staggering 252 days. Given the incredible speed at which AI can now generate adaptive malware and conduct automated, massive-scale phishing campaigns, the critical question for every single organization shifting towards a 2026 mindset isn't just if you'll be attacked. It's whether your response velocity, your ability to detect, react, and remediate can actually beat the sheer accelerating speed of the automated adversary. How quickly can your organization realistically shorten that 252-day window?
That time compression, shrinking that window, that's really the 2026 imperative. And for strategic planning resources, including those compliance calendars and framework roadmaps that are essential for helping you shrink that window, definitely visit our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.services.
And to help you stay ahead of those human-centric seasonal scams that target your people and make them vulnerable, especially those Medicare and holiday scams that are peaking right now, make sure you check out the timely alerts and resources over at www.scamwatchhq.com. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.